Sometimes I think if we talk about that second path, sometimes I think about nuclear bombs and the invention of the atomic bomb and how it compares. Like, how is this different? Because the atomic bomb came along, and I imagine a lot of people at that time thought our days are numbered. But
Yes, I was there. We did.
yeah, but we're still here.
We're still here, yes. So the atomic bomb was really only good for one thing, and it was very obvious how it worked. Even if you hadn't had the pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was obvious that it was a very big bomb that was very dangerous. With AI, it's good for many, many things. It's going to be magnificent in healthcare and education and more or less any industry that needs to use its data. It's going to be able to use it better with AI. So we're not going to stop the development. You know, people say, well, why don't we just stop it now? We're not going to stop it because it's too good for too many things. Also, we're not going to stop it because it's good for battle robots, and none of the countries that sell weapons are going to want to stop it. Like the European regulations, they have some regulations about AI, and it's good they have some regulations, but they're not designed to deal with most of the threats. And in particular, the European regulations have a clause in them that say none of these regulations apply to military uses of AI. So governments are willing to regulate companies and people, but they're not willing to regulate themselves.
It seems pretty crazy to me that I go back and forward, but if Europe has a regulation, but the rest of the world doesn't, aren't we just
puts
putting
them at a
ourselves
competitive disadvantage.
Yeah.
So
And we're seeing this already. I don't think people realize that when OpenAI release a new model or a new piece of software in America, they can't release it to Europe yet because of regulations here. So Sam Altman tweeted saying, our new AI agent thing is available to everybody, but it can't come to Europe yet because there's regulations.
yes.
And what does that gives us a productivity disadvantage?
Yes.
Like,
What we need is, I mean, at this point in history, when we're about to produce things more intelligent than ourselves, what we really need is a kind of world government that works, run by intelligent, thoughtful people. And that's not what we got.
so free for all.
Well, what we've got is we've got capitalism, which is done very nicely by us. It's produced lots of goods and services for us. But these big companies, they're legally required to try and maximize profits. Mm-hmm. And that's not what you want from the people developing this stuff.
So let's do the risks then. You talked about there's human risks and then there's...
So I've distinguished these two kinds of risk. Yep. Let's talk about all the risks from bad human actors using AI. There's cyber attacks. So between 2023 and 2024, they increased by about a factor of 1,200%. And that's probably because these large language models make it much easier to do phishing attacks.
And a phishing attack, for anyone that doesn't know, is...
They send you something saying, hi, I'm your friend John, and I'm stuck in El Salvador. Could you just wire this money? That's one kind of attack. Yeah. But the phishing attacks are really trying to get your logon credentials.
And now with AI, they can clone my voice, my image.
They can do all that.
I'm struggling at the moment because there's a bunch of AI scams on X and also Meta. And there's one in particular on Meta, so Instagram, Facebook at the moment, which is a paid advert where they've taken my voice from the podcast. They've taken my mannerisms and they've made a new video of me encouraging people to go and take part in this crypto Ponzi scam or whatever. And we spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end emailing Meta, telling please take this down. They take it down, another one pops up. They take that one down, another one pops up. So it's like whack-a-mole.
Yes,
and then
very annoying.
The heartbreaking part is you get the messages from people that have fallen for the scam, and they've lost £500 or $500.
And they're cross with you because you recommended it.
And I'm sad for them.
It's very annoying.
Yeah.
I have a smaller version of that, which is some people now publish papers with me as one of the authors. Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's in order that they can get lots of citations to themselves.
So cyber attacks, a very real threat. There's been an explosion of those.
And these already, obviously AI is very patient. So they can go through 100 million lines of code looking for known ways of attacking them. That's easy to do. But they're going to get more creative. And some people believe, some people who know a lot believe that maybe by 2030, they'll be creating new kinds of cyber attacks, which no person ever thought of. So That's very worrisome.
Because they can think for themselves and
They
discover
can
new
think for
ways to attack.
themselves. They can draw new conclusions from much more data than a person ever saw.
Is there anything you're doing to protect yourself from cyber attacks at all?
Yes. It's one of the few places where I changed what I do radically because I'm scared of cyber attacks. Canadian banks are extremely safe. In 2008, no Canadian banks came anywhere near going bust. So they're very safe banks because they're well regulated, fairly well regulated. Nevertheless, I think a cyber attack might be able to bring down a bank. Now, if you have all my savings are in shares in banks held by banks. So if the bank gets attacked and it holds your shares, they're still your shares. And so I think you'd be okay unless the attacker sells the shares, because the bank can sell the shares. If the attacker sells your shares, I think you're screwed. I don't know. I mean, maybe the bank would have to try and reimburse you, but the bank's bust by now, right? So I'm worried about a Canadian bank being taken down by a cyber attack and the attacker selling shares that it holds. So I spread my money, my children's money, between 3 banks, in the belief that if a cyber attack takes down one Canadian bank, the other Canadian banks will very quickly get very careful.
And do you have a phone that's not connected to the internet? Do you have any, like, I'm thinking about storing data and stuff like that. Do you think it's wise to consider having cold storage?
I have a little disk drive and I back up my laptop on this hard drive. So I actually have everything on my laptop on a hard drive. At least, if the whole internet went down, I had the sense I still got it on my laptop and I still got my information. Okay. Then the next thing is using AIs to create nasty viruses.
Okay.
And the problem with that is that just requires one crazy guy with a grudge, one guy who knows a little bit of molecular biology, knows a lot about AI, and just wants to destroy the world. You can now create new viruses relatively cheaply using AI. And you don't have to be a very skilled molecular biologist to do it. And that's very scary. So you could have a small cult, for example. A small cult might be able to raise a few $1 million. For a few $1 million, they might be able to design a whole bunch of viruses.
Well, I'm thinking about some of our foreign adversaries doing government-funded programs. I mean, there was lots of talk around COVID and the Wuhan laboratory and what they were doing in gain-of-function research. But I'm wondering if in, a China or a Russia or an Iran or something, the government could fund a program for a small group of scientists to make a virus that they could,
I think they could, yes. Now, they'd be worried about retaliation. They'd be worried about other governments doing the same to them. Hopefully that would help keep it under control. They might also be worried about the virus spreading to their country.
Okay.
Then there's corrupting elections.
Okay.
So if you wanted to use AI to corrupt elections, a very effective thing is to be able to do targeted political advertisements where you know a lot about the person. So anybody who wanted to use AI for corrupting elections would try and get as much data as they could about everybody in the electorate. With that in mind, it's a bit worrying what Musk is doing at present in the States, going in and insisting on getting access to all these things that were very carefully siloed. The claim is it's to make things more efficient, but it's exactly what you would want if you intended to corrupt the next election.
How do you mean? Because you get all this data on the
You get all this data on people.
Yeah.
You know how much they make, where they live. You know everything about them. Once you know that, it's very easy to manipulate them.
Because you can make an AI that...
You can send messages that they'll find very convincing, telling them not to vote, for example. So I have no reason other than common sense to think this, but I wouldn't be surprised if part of the motivation of getting all this data from American government sources is to corrupt elections. Another part might be that it's very nice training data for a big model.
But he would have to be taking that data from the government and feeding it into his...
Yes. And what they've done is turned off lots of the security controls, got rid of some of the organization to protect against that.